Right.
Is this the? Are you doing audio and video, or are you just doing video, or are you doing
Video and both.
Do you you post this up on Spotify and all the audio?
I usually go
platforms as
YouTube, and then
video,
I
right?
do a copy print on like Facebook. Facebook and Instagram don't like you pulling traffic away from their websites. So if you post like a link to like YouTube or something, the word is that it'll get like shadow banned and whatnot.
Wait, I don't understand. Say that again.
So say I post a clip of one of our clips from today on Instagram.
Yeah.
But then on the thing, I post a link to the YouTube, right?
Oh.
Meta is looking at that like, okay, you're taking traffic away from Instagram, Meta, Facebook, and sending it over to YouTube.
Sure.
I don't want to put this out there as
Where
much.
did you learn this?
I don't know, some conspiracy.com.
So, well, that's true. So all the platforms are priority.
It makes sense though, right?
Yeah. Well, they want you to stay in their sandbox.
Yeah.
Right. So, but
If I'm giving you like McDoubles and Big Macs, I don't want you to have to go get your soda from Hardee's.
You're not going to go out and get that Frosty. Not from Wendy's. Thanks, Joe.
but then if you recognize that and you say, okay, well then I'm going to play that game, and you don't have TikTok, right? Because that's the #1 growth tool out there. I'm okay with. I haven't found it work.
It doesn't spook you at all?
What?
I hate
TikTok?
I hate it.
Oh yeah, that's why I don't have it.
Yeah.
Hate it.
I don't know if I hate it the same way I hate like gambling and smoking cigarettes. Is that I just know it's addictive,
Yeah, but-
and it's gonna lead to no good.
And the truth is, we can hate it, but like this guy, a story this morning, the Inky Boys. I learned this morning. Father died from colon cancer, 35 years old.
Okay.
He was doing TikToks with his 6-year-old son, and they're super famous. So we may not like it, but tomorrow's entertainment doesn't care whether we like it or not.
For sure.
Yes, that's right.
Artificial intelligence is moving forward.
Mike, you straight from the south side. Mike, I'm just so happy to be here right now. Real Rap Podcast.
Then we are back, ladies and gentlemen, once again, season 2, Real Rap Podcast. Special guest in the house today, ladies and gentlemen. I have to my left, Chris Kelsch, man. If you wouldn't mind letting them know where you're from, how long you been in the city, and a little bit about yourself.
Born and raised in the Chicago area. Went to Michigan State, but when I got back from Michigan State, we don't need to talk about the specific years, but lived in Lincoln Park, Wicker Park, and got hooked on improvisation and comedy. Met Scott Anderson through the improv world, and him and I have a improv and comedy background. But to the behind-the-scenes kind of thing, we both have kind of a business background that we're both really proud of, and have done some cool stuff in that world too. So we kind of connected that way. We were a little bit older. So I'm just a diehard Chicago guy. I dreamt about other places, thought about doing the L.A. Hollywood thing, thought about doing the New York thing, but in the end of the day, was always happy in the Midwest, and love comedy, love film, as you know. Love good television, sports and entertainment, pop culture. Love broadcasting as an art form. And
does anybody ever not know that you're from Chicago the absolute second that they meet you? And I mean anywhere.
that's a great question. I had one guy.
Doesn't he embody
The very first second I met him, in the human being experience of life, like seeing a baby born or breaking up with your girlfriend, when I walked up to him and I shook his hand and he responded, I went, holy fuck.
He's so Chicago, they should sell him at Walgreens on Michigan.
If Chris were a sausage, he'd be like a year-long supply of Chicago sausage.
Gentlemen, I'm humbled. Thank you. You guys get me.
It's the Bears, the Cubs.
Man.
Yeah.
Listen.
And everything else
It's the
that's
Blackhawks.
effed up. It's everything. It's like, that ain't right. They gotta fix that.
But
They gotta fix that.
Like, if I talk to you for 3 minutes, you could either be the mayor, a gangster, or a teacher.
Exactly.
It's all the same. It takes and you guys have both lived here long enough to negotiate life on a day-to-day basis, whether you're here on the south side, up where Scott's studio is, the suburbs, trying to get to O'Hare. You've got to have all of that in you to negotiate an existence. You've got to be part OG. part good
gives
guy.
you a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
Wait. We stepped over that bridge.
We also stepped over your introduction. And to my right, I have the one and only Scottie Rocks.
Scottie Rocks.
Scottie Rocks, if you wouldn't mind, let the ladies and gentlemen at home know a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how long you've been in the city, what you got going on.
Well, first of all, I wish I sounded like Chris.
Oh, he went to his.
I sound like somebody that was
production voice.
sucking helium and didn't do a very good job.
Too modest.
Killing it right now.
Too modest.
Where do I start? There's so many different beginnings. We'll start with the one that led me here. So in 1984, my mother's husband was a member of a country club in Dallas, Texas, where they lived, and I was attending Louisiana Tech. And at this country club where my mother's husband, I say that because I didn't have a stepfather, but she remarried. His name was Teddy, and he was best friends with a guy named Mike Ditka, who at the time was the defensive coach for the Dallas Cowboys.
I heard that name before.
Special teams coordinator.
I heard that name before.
Right, and they became good buddies, and they were good friends, and so. And my mother's husband Teddy, he was an All-American at Texas Tech, so he and Mike had a lot in common. Plus, they loved to gamble and drink. So in 1985, when they won the Super Bowl, after that, Mike Ditka asked my mother's husband Teddy if he wanted to come to Chicago and manage Ditka's O'Hare. So my mom and Teddy moved here, and they managed Ditka's O'Hare restaurant. So I moved here because my mother, who had been in Texas, now I was off on my own after college, and I wanted to go to the big city, but New York seemed too big. So I said I'll go to Chicago. My mom lives there. So I moved here in '93 with my cousin, who beautiful girl. She's a model. And we shared an apartment, and she slept in the closet, literally.
Wait a minute.
Because she didn't need any sunlight, truly. And it was a long closet. It fit a full-size bed.
Long like a coffin? She was a vampire?
Yeah, like that. And she slept in there, and I slept in the studio part of the apartment for an entire year. That was in '93 and '94.
Yeah.
And then I got wrapped up.
You remember what neighborhood?
Oh yeah, I lived at State and Chestnut, right there.
Gold Coast.
Yeah, Gold Coast. I lived on the 12th floor, and I faced west, and all you saw was a grid of lights. It was really quite beautiful. But then we left that space. I lived with another friend, and then I moved into Old Town, and then I started working for myself. Just started and got to an advertising agency, and then started to struggle with advertising. But at the same time, I wanted to do improv, like Chris mentioned. So I lived down the street from Second City. I went to Second City 3 nights a week. I went and watched their improv, and then I auditioned for the Improv Conservatory. And the first audition didn't work out. I got a letter. It said I sucked, and that I should take more classes, and I took it so personally. But after I kept reading that letter for a month, I looked at the end of the letter. It said, we suggest you try acting for improv, or improv for actors. So I took this class with Michael Gelman. And once I did that class, I had a better grasp of what I wasn't doing right. And then I auditioned, and I made it into the conservatory. Did it for 5 years. Then along the way, I joined on with Improv Olympic. And my second team, I was on an improv team with Jack McBrayer. I took classes from Del Close, and that was a part of my career. And then I auditioned for Tony and Tina's. I was in that for a year. And then I got this job at Playboy. And then that took off. And I left all the acting and improv behind and went to Playboy for 15 years. And somewhere in the middle there, though, I was missing the improv. So I went back for a second career. This time I was a little wiser.
Yeah.
I was a little bit more in a production mode. I was ready to make money. I was ready to slick some palms, and I was able to play a lot. I created a lot of creative for the improv groups. I love that whole process, and it's a part of the... I believe in this philosophy of yes.
Yeah, I believe 60% of entertainers in Chicago at some point in time had to go through Second City in some capacity.
Probably the number's probably higher.
Probably high. Have you ever been in a scene that was just tanking?
Yeah, all the
And
time.
you just had to be a part of it?
Yep, all the time.
See it through the
No, I
end.
was pointing to the camera like right now. Oh, anyway, so to finish my story, that's it. That's how I got here, and I love this city. And now I have my own business, and that's why I met you guys. I met Chris.
Yeah.
Chris and I sort of parted ways like all improvisers do. They go to one team and they get another coach and things go off. And then we sort of parted ways and I went off and had kids and got married. And I was leaving Playboy one day on my bike near the end of the run there, near the end of the 15 years. And I saw Chris walking on the street and he was super in shape and thin. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Got nothing to do. I got a camera in a basement. And when you want to come over and shoot some photos," and I knew he'd love to be in the camera because he'd show me his work. He said, "Yeah." And that's how we reconnected. Here we are right now on your podcast. What do you call this podcast?
It's a Real Rap podcast.
The Real Rap.
The Real Rap.
Yeah. Rap stands for regular ass people.
Oh,
all
cool.
right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, right?
Cool.
Good acronym action.
When I lived in Bangkok, Thailand, and I was on a baseball team in the 4th grade, the name of our team was the Reynolds Raps. Our sponsors was Reynolds Aluminum.
Wait a minute.
We were called the Reynolds Raps. We had a good winning season then too.
Dad's jokes before they were the thing again. Mm-hmm. Oh hell yeah, man! Like how much? Like what would you say is the biggest overall change that you've seen in the city? You living here, being from here, watching it season in, season out.
Okay. I was when I got out of school and moved back to Chicago. It was 1990, and I thought so. That was when Richard M. Daley took office, and I was a young man's perspective, so I may have glossed over a lot of the things that were wrong with the city. But those 90s were amazing. I mean, Chicago was growing. It was attracting a certain type of professional worker. The tax base was really strong. Building, expanding, beautification, black iron fences everywhere. And these are not, I mean, they sound like small things, but they're big things. They say a volume of things about how your city is presented to the rest of the world. So when Daley came in, flower pots down the middle of boulevards. And remember Michigan Avenue with just these plants, and you're thinking, what's going on? It's really important that when visitors come in, business people from the outside, from all over the world, come in and see a beautiful, pristine city, that they need to see that. It's not a small thing.
Sure.
It's put when you land from O'Hare and you take a limo or whatever, you can see flowers everywhere, nice signage, and everything has to look that way because you're presenting the city to the outside world. Daley really understood that, and so I saw a city that was really up and coming in the 90s, continues to thrive. One of the things I loved about it is that unlike a lot of other cities, it's very, very diverse. So it's not like Detroit where it's just cars. Chicago is finance, publishing,
Stockyards,
some manufacturing, some entertainment, some publishing, advertising, law.
Advertising. I feel like I just saw a documentary when they were talking about like the Jolly Green Giant and like the Lucky Charms guys and all that advertising.
Manufactured here.
Yeah, my dad was a Chicago ad man for a lot of years, and the Chicago agency business. Didn't get the attention that Madison Avenue did in New York, but if you looked at the work that was coming out of Chicago, the same time the work that was coming out of New York, Tony the Tiger. I mean, Leo Burnett was
that Mad Men. I think was based on
Pillsbury
those guys.
Doughboy.
The Mad Men was based on a Chicago.
Yeah, that agency or whatever.
The creative director of Burnett, Drake something.
Something,
That's
right?
That's where my wife works, Burnett.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the Chicago advertising scene was amazing, and my dad, God bless him, he would take me on commercial shoots. He let me sit in on writing meetings a couple times, where it'd be a big thing where guys pitching ideas. He let me sit on that, and he gave me exposed to all that stuff, and I really fell in love with that part of Chicago as well. And there were big accounts in Chicago, man. My dad worked on Kraft. My dad worked on McDonald's.
United.
Oh yeah,
American.
Burnett. Yeah, oh, God.
Sure.
All
I mean,
that stuff.
It's a big list.
Yeah.
In my mind, so the Bears just had possibly the top 3 worst seasons of all time, right? But they're gonna get the #1 draft pick. So congratulations to you guys, man. But back in the 90s, right? That's when that's when the Bulls were really clicking.
Oh.
Was the city just kind of like holding hands
Insane.
and
Oh, it
skipping
was
down the
great.
street and
It was
everybody?
great.
It was
Was
great.
a little bit more
Crazy.
zippity doo dah
There was
going
so
on.
much to do. Every time you just go to someone's house and watch the game, be at a party with everybody. It was very connecting. It was the sports really.
As
cool.
for the whole city, isn't
whole
that,
city.
isn't that that's crazy? Like how
no,
sports or something good in general
Yeah.
can just lift up the spirits of
Yeah.
of an entire city.
You want to win. You want to win.
Yeah.
It's human nature. You want to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't play, so you want to root for the guy that can play because he's from your city, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
live here.
Yeah, it's
It was
true.
a big deal. They
You
were a
had
big
to, and
deal.
you had to watch. You couldn't not watch because
Yeah.
he was so unique.
Every
watching
bar,
greatness.
It was just great, and you can't.
Everywhere you ate.
can't say you were alive during Babe Ruth and didn't watch him. You had to
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you knew it was unique in history, and it was probably never going to come around again. I mean, it might, but the chances of seeing another player like that again. So I watched all of his games, and when he came back for that second time, I never missed a game because I knew it was going to be amazing, and it was. And those were the years, Scott, I probably should have been applying myself on an improv stage, but if there's a part of me that said, wait a minute, this is kind of unique too, and I want to watch this. I want to see greatness.
Yeah.
I want to watch I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah,
Well, you love sports, so you have a well-balanced life, right?
yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe you need to get out more.
Right,
You
right.
couldn't avoid it back then, but I mean, it was so universally binding.
But
When somebody hits that rarefied air of being that guy and that person in anything that they do, when somebody's that special, because right now it's like, well, it's kind of rocky, but like Elon Musk is in that category where even if you're not involved in the things he offers, Tesla, Twitter, or whatever, you just know about the guy,
Yeah.
because he's doing something unique, so many other things
Of note,
Yeah.
noteworthy. He does noteworthy stuff.
But especially like sports people or a musician or something like that.
But what was cool in Chicago back then is it had big national celebrities like that. Jordan was huge. Oprah was freaking
Facts.
huge. And then just like the day-to-day, like Harry Carey and guys like that,
Yeah.
they had these big gregarious personalities
Yeah.
that made it really fun to live
Yeah.
there. Like, not that the Cubs were any good. The fucking Cubs sucked. They sucked. They were a terrible franchise, but you'd go to Wrigley Field and it was fun. And
Tradition.
Tradition. Thank you, Scott. Drink a bunch of beer, sit out in the sun,
Get drunk.
take your shirt off, get your tan,
Or get arrested.
look at the hotties in
Yeah.
the bleachers, get arrested,
Get bailed out.
all that stuff.
It's,
Chicago.
yeah, and it's always had that element, but it's also always had like a sharp edge to it. Like when you think of Chicago, or if somebody comes from Chicago, like the vibe you get from them is like, you're from there. That in my mind, it gives me a feeling of vibe.
You're right, and everyone could take a shot at it, but I'll sum up what you're talking about. Here's my take on it: work hard to play hard. These people worked hard and wanted to be successful, and were willing to do the work. The play hard is pretty much everyone you meet in Chicago is fucking looking for a good time.
Yeah.
Is looking for they're looking to
Yeah.
laugh. They're looking to go out to eat. Food and
Sure.
comedy and all those things are big staples of Chicago. And I also think, just one other theory, because we live in a cold weather city, this goes back to caveman DNA and being hunters and gatherers, but I think in a city like Chicago, when the weather gets like this, and it's January and February, you're forced indoors, you're forced to gather, and whether you're just sitting around watching a game like we talk about, or meeting people for dinner, or just having a good time, sitting around having drinks, having sushi, whatever it is, I think that people in Chicago are more forced to be connected, and you build these relationships and these friendships that last a really long time. And I think in fair weather cities, there's not as much incentive to spend time with friends because you can always be outdoors.
You're not gonna have any time to miss them.
Right.
Everything you said is true. That was what I heard when I first moved here, right? It's going to be cold, so you might as well work. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to make money. But the other thing I learned right away after I discovered all that was, if you network, like, this is the city to learn how to network.
Yep.
Like, this is the Chicago way. The reason they call that, because everybody here who has a sense of networking knows how to do it really well. I had a friend that was a trader, and he did a lot of business with the Japanese. And this guy was always teaching me how to just talk to regular people. Hey, the next time he gives you his card, why don't you fucking look at it? What are you talking about? Well, the businessman gave you his card. Let me show you how the Japanese do it. Right?
Wow.
They give you a card. They have two hands on it. Present it to you. You take the card with two hands. You look at it. You look at the person that gave it to you. You look at it again. You nod and acknowledge it. Right? And then you don't put it away in front of them. You hold on to it.
Oh, cool.
Stuff like that, right?
Never thought
This
of that.
city is a networking city. The politicians are perfect examples. I'm sitting on something you can't fucking believe.
Yeah.
I got
It's a lot of side
what's
conversations.
What's his
It's a lot of
segment say?
inside voice conversations.
Yes.
What did he say, Chris? I got something. What's his the governor? What did he say? The governor Blagojevich.
Oh, this thing is fucking golden.
yeah. That
That'll send you to jail. This thing is fucking golden.
Well, that's the other part of Chicago
And it's
too.
a hairbrush.
You got like names like Anton Cermak, Harold Washington, like the mayors. The political system in Chicago is also infamous, right?
It goes back to if you look at a couple of cities, you guys saw The Departed and all that.
Yeah.
That it has to do with when the
Dump
Irish
them in the mosh.
in the mine. Not where some guy from John Hancock goes to get a blowjob. The story of Boston, New York, and Chicago, and a lot of the East Coast cities are very similar. The Irish were very downtrodden. Obviously, a lot of them got kicked out of Ireland.
Kelsch, Irish, no? Or is
No,
that German?
German.
German, right.
But when the Irish got to America, they stuck together. And so when they got political power, the Irish is like almost like the mafia. Like when they so they talk about the South Side Irish. The Irish got power, the dailies and all that stuff. Same thing in Boston. Irish got the power. Blah blah blah. That's why in that little monologue in the opening of The Departed, when Jack Nicholson goes, then 1960 came and we finally got the White House. That means all the Irish got the White House. So they stick together, and that's the basis.
Joe was a bootlegger.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the basis of political power in cities like, not so much anymore, but that's the basics of it. Chicago, Boston, New York was the Irish.
That's where all the bootlegging was happening, right? Prohibition was really
right.
I mean, the top three
That really-
cities,
yeah.
right? You can't have any fun.
It does that weird power dynamic too,
Yes.
because it's the wink wink. This is illegal, but a certain number of people are always going to benefit in any scenario.
Do you guys
Grease the right palm.
Do you guys remember a couple years ago when Trump got into all that trouble with that phone call?
Trouble? What?
Yeah, with that phone call that he made with Rudy Giuliani to the Ukraine, where he goes, "Yeah, we're gonna send you your aid and all that stuff, but one thing, could you do us a favor?" And everyone got all in an uproar over that because he said that. And the only thing I can say is, being a Chicagoan and anyone who's been in New York, the words, "Can you do us a favor?" must be spoken 50,000 times a day in city halls, in everywhere else, in cities like New York, Boston, and Chicago. The difference is, of course, Trump tried to export that to the federal. But that's, "Can you do us a favor?" has got to be spoken 20,000 times an hour.
Well, and I'll say yes to that, and I'll up you one. As recently as about 2 weeks ago, with the mayor's assistant that invited the school children to help her with her campaign. Right? Could you do us a favor? My name is Lori Lightfoot. I'm the mayor of Chicago, and can you do me a favor?
I'll give you the day off from school.
I'll get you creamsicles.
How is it? Yeah, how is it any different? Tell me what's different.
It's not.
It's not.
But the key is to say, "Can you do me a favor?" Or I can do you a favor.
Yeah. Right. Is there more corruption now, or is it just getting caught more now? Because it had to have been worse before. But there's so many people before there was everything you could watch. It had to have been worse because there's people who are getting caught so stupid.
Everything was worse. Any stuff that you can bring up, everything was worse.
Yeah.
Now we have cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
Cameras everywhere. Walk into Target.
Are you guys following? Speaking of cameras everywhere, are you guys following this Tyree Nichols story? It just happened.
Yeah.
5 former police officers in Memphis, Tennessee, have been charged tonight with second-degree murder in a killing that has echoed across the country. The victim, Tyree Nichols, died after a confrontation during a traffic stop earlier this month.
Yeah,
it's beyond sad. I also say this, and Scott and I we're saying this, and here's my theory. All the wrongs of the world, I hate to boil them down, but it comes down to wounded men. It comes down to men who were wounded one way or another growing up, and when they come into adulthood or positions of power, this is how they act out. It's awful to see. There's no reason for it, and I'm just sad. I mean, it's just a sad thing.
Bless the dead, but there had to have been like just a half a moment when you guys were like, at least they weren't white.
But here's another thing that really scares me, though. Our police in the field, because of all the cameras everywhere, because they're under so much scrutiny, our police operating at 100% mental capacity and making good decisions.
I don't think they could have ever. I don't think a police officer that's been through anything or been on the job for X amount of time can possibly operate on the same level as the guy that works at the at the computer techs R Us. You know what I mean? Like the Best Buy isn't going through the same trauma.
I didn't think that way at all. I expected him to be white. I lived in
Memphis. You would expect it. Right?
I lived in Memphis.
Yeah.
It's, again, I mean, they had a special unit called the Scorpions, right? These cities now aren't just cities that are experience violence. It's war. It's war tactics, right?
Sure.
They responded to a young man who had a traffic stop.
Yeah.
Had a traffic stop. That's all.
Yeah.
It's a traffic stop. And when you hear him, when you hear his voice, you hear how calm he is. And so... You know, it's like Chris said, it's sad. It's just a sad statement on the status of everything.
There's no way to not show it, and whenever you show it, it drives a bigger divide in any kind of relationship possible that you could have, because you just lump it all in with the same. All right, that group of people are bad, but you represent.
And not to be cynical, but it gets to the point now where I turn it off because there's a theater to it that's been added to it. So like what you said is true, and then it goes to CNN and Don Lemon.
Don Lemon was talking about it and said, we're watching this live. I mean, we're watching it live. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't. He was beside himself. And I was too, because the next one's going to be, when are we going to watch? Who's going to get the popcorn for the shooting squad, right? These things are...
Is there any way possible to show these stories, put this out there without inciting like negative emotions? Is there any better way to get this information out there?
Because there's always opportunity. Some lawyer is going to get out there and going to want to say, someone's always looking at that saying, how much money can we make off of that? And get me in front of the cameras. I'll create the divide, but I'll also make the money, and we'll do this, that, and the other. Just human nature.
Because I think the same thing whenever they show like Cho Sung-wee, the kid that shot up whatever, or the Columbines, or pick the Vegas guy, or whatever. They cover it, and it's like, man, if you cover it, you're kind of motivating other people. But how can you not cover it? And it's easy to see. It's not easy, but my reflex too is to be like, man, they're shining too much light on this. Man, the media is just trying to capitalize. If it bleeds, it leads, right? But can they not show it? Can they not talk about it?
Not if they want to be relevant.
Yeah, I'm with Scott on that. You have to show it because it's I don't know why you have to show it, but you have to show it.
They believe it's their duty, right? It's the news and it should be reported. But I'll tell you what, waking up at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, turning on WGN, it's an exercise in failure and disappointment and despair. And when you turn it on at 5:30 at night, it's the same thing. There's no good. The reason WGN is so good, and the reason people like it, is because they have to broadcast all that, but their antidote is humor, on the spot in the moment. The show is so fun.
And cooking
by people that shouldn't be cooking.
And weather from people who shouldn't be giving weather.
Right. I mean, they
do a weather and traffic update every 5 minutes. That's crazy. But
The
Scott's
way
right.
the way they can transition from like say that story, and then go to like, and now let's go to da.
If you had
Over
this,
to the new cupcake shop.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like, what? How do you do that?
with a new take on a Chicago hot dog. It's been done. You can't do a Chicago hot dog.
But
Give
they
it
will.
up. But
They will.
They will.
And it's because that's the one effect that they create that's a product of the show that's actually entertaining. Because otherwise, you're just glued to it to hear about which wreck happened in Indiana, who fell under the train last night, yada, yada, yada.
It's the social visual car crash.
Yeah. It's my friend had an expression: hideous, yet I can't look away.
You can't not watch it.
What was that old Simpsons thing? What was that old Simpsons thing with the chief? And he's like,
Wiggum?
Wiggum going, all right, folks, all right. There's nothing more for you people to see. Oh, my God. Hey, come here. Look at this. You want to see this? You want to see this?
So as I hear you both talking and I think about what we're talking about, I think about this.
Yeah.
Sure. But as I start to think about this, I don't want to say the normal asinine things I say about technology because I love it. But if I compared it to a metaphor that you started with, this is like taking away the veil. There's no the Wizard of Oz is always on display. He's always naked. He's farting. He's got zits and pimples.
No curtain.
Right?
There's
He
no
grows
curtain.
up. Right? He's masturbating in front of
curtain.
No curtain.
The King's New Road.
This is our curtain, and the curtain is see through all the time. But then that transparency goes to what you said. The only camera that caught that heinous act was from up there. Then my other question is, I'm thinking about it. How did they not know the blue light was on? Because every time they show the clip, the blue light's on. There's 5 or 10, there's 11 people down there that are standing in front of blue light. How did they not know that's being recorded? Right? Where's the decency to just know that, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. Somebody should stand up. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. That's all you can say about it.
That mentality. Somebody that would take it, because you hold somebody with the ability of life and death. You hold them in the regard of you're supposed to be. I mean, professional is kind of too light of a word, but like, how do you even? There's no way to really like counteract that, right?
No, I can't. And Scott.
Well, they're working. They're trying. They've been trying for however long, but it still happened on such a regular basis, like you said.
Oh, that's true. And if I could just piggyback a little bit on what Scott said, it has reached craziness. Like anything else, anything that's good or anything that improves people's lives, as those phones do. I mean, would any of us have met without these?
Doubt it.
Probably not. I would have to have gone to see a bunch of your shows out in the Red Room, and it may not have happened. But in any event, what I'm saying is, like anything else, there's good and there's bad, and you have to find balance. Like, and here's something like the revolt of the far right people in the House of Representatives.
January 6th?
Yeah, well, not January 6th, but this year when McCarthy tried to get those guys to run to.
Oh, when he had to do it like a record number of times and whatnot.
That can easily be a result of people on social media that are not playing on teams, that are only addicted to their own followers and their own agenda. And I've got X amount of followers on Twitter, and I've got this.
What little deals was he cutting behind closed doors on rejection number 12?
I don't know.
Promise
But after rejection 11, I'm going to the Democrats and going, give me 15 Democrats that aren't crazy and come on over and I'll work with you. But all I'm saying is, that phone has brought as much pain and as much disaster as it has good. And there's balance there. But I think social media, I think when kids are on social media, especially when you're in high school, and you look out and you see your friends going to prom, and maybe you're not that lucky or whatever, kids are starting to figure things out, be on the football team, be a star, but you're in high school and you're kind of maybe a little bit slow.
Yeah.
You don't figure things out till maybe you're in college or something. I could see how people get angry and get upset, and the fact that so many things turn to violence doesn't surprise me.
Well, it really is. The calendar really is BCP and ACP. before cell phones and after. Because we were around to watch it inaugurated, take effect, evolve, and be what it is now.
Find your addiction.
If you were born 30, 38, 28 years ago, these are just there. They're a thing.
Right.
There's no concept of life without it. Like a map. Do you know how many things I can't bring up in conversation right now? Because I'll just be old instantly.
You were talking about what it was like in Chicago in the 90s, and we were both young and having fun. So if you wanted to have a social hookup in the 90s, you
had a beeper.
You had a beeper, or you ran home.
Y'all was like 2 Live Crew in it.
You meet someone. I'd be at work. Some guy would stop by my cube and go, "Hey man, Danny's having a party tonight, throwing down. Why don't you stop on by a little bit?" I went, "Okay, do me a favor," and then I'd write down my home phone number, give it to him, and say, "Could you call that number and leave me the address and the time when you get a chance?" The guy goes, "Yeah, no problem." It was called voicemails. So you had a voice machine with a. You know what this is? You don't even know what this is. It was a voice machine with a cassette, and people would call your house and say, "Hey man, it's Dan's throwing down at beep."
Yeah. Like, who even leaves a voicemail now? If you leave me a voicemail, it could be 5 minutes long. It's just a beep on my phone to let me know that I missed your call. I'm not listening to it. I'll listen to it. It'll be 7 months later, so don't put any information in there.
That's what the text is for.
Yeah. Speaking of, the segue out of nowhere. Wow. So you worked.
That's our new podcast.
That was good.
Speaking of.
I didn't even see it coming.
So you worked for, possibly one of the premier, maybe not the first nude gentleman's magazine of all time, but the first premier one, right?
Entertainment for Men.
Entertainment for Men. You worked for Playboy for, what was it, 15 years?
Yeah, a little short of that. 14.7 or something like that.
And I think you might have told me before, but for the viewers at home, how did you stumble into this profession?
I have a degree in design from Louisiana Tech University. When I attended LSU, I started in art and design, but then I started to major in drinking, and I tried out for cheerleader. I had a younger friend from my high school. She came to LSU, and she said, "Will you help me try out for cheerleader?" I said, "Sure." So I guess, I fit in with the other big guys on the team, so I tried out for cheerleader, and I made it, and she didn't. And then my life took a tumble. I remember praying one night saying, "I got to leave this place. I can't make it." And I left and I went to Louisiana Tech. And then I got a degree from there. I forgot what the question was.
How did you get into Playboy? I was like, this is going to be sweet. Wait, the cheerleader, you need to help her get on the cheerleading team. I see where this is going.
No.
I've seen this intro before.
So I don't like. So the point,
Scott was never lonely.
Yeah. Listen, I had I fulfilled my role as
hit my pager, baby. I can help you.
I joined.
Get on the team.
I was in a frat. I was a cheerleader, and I was an artist. I'd do whatever I want. But I wanted to go to school. I wanted to get a degree. So went to Louisiana Tech, and I got my degree in art and design. And when I was in high school, when I was 18, my counselor said, "Come over to our house one day." My daughter said that yesterday. She said, "Your counselors invited you to their house?" I went, "It's a different time." Yeah, they weren't stalking us. They weren't. What's the word you use for someone following you?
Oh, it feels dangerous.
They weren't doing that to me. So they taught me how to screen print, like on a Saturday when I was 18. So then I learned how to screen print, and then my entrepreneurial spirit just took off. I wrote down when I was 16, I want to have an advertising agency and do all this. And then I started my own screen printing company when I was in college, and I graduated without a portfolio because for the 2 years before I graduated, I was actually doing the design work for stores and T-shirts and drawing and all that.
Yeah.
And then I had a T-shirt company I worked for, so I graduated in art and design, and then I said, I'm going to move to a big city. I wanted to do theater as well, and Chicago is really well known for theater being a big hub as well as the commercial advertising because it's number 3 in the world for advertising. So I knew I'd get a job, and I moved here, got a job in advertising like I'd always dreamed of, and then a year later I quit because I hated it because I found myself very young working on projects. I had no idea. I was working on Mercedes-Benz and silly things, but I didn't have the concept. I didn't have a concept of money or what it was like to drive a Mercedes-Benz, and it was too much stress. And then I started freelancing, and that was a lot easier. And then all of a sudden, I had my own T1 line with my roommate. I had my first Mac in 1989, 1990. I had a Mac 2. And within 6 months, the guy at the computer store said to me, he said, hey, listen, I got some bad news for you. I can't teach you anymore. I've run out of what I know. So I had Adobe Illustrator 1. I taught myself that, just looking in the index. And I did it with all the programs, Quark. And I just been on the computer since 90. And I got really good at the computer. And then when I moved here, it was my asset. I knew a lot about the Mac, and I could talk my way into situations. And then I was freelancing. I had my own T1. I had my own website. I was doing website design. And then I said, I don't want to sell subscriptions. I'm not going to do that. And this freelancer called me and said, hey, they're looking for a webmaster at Playboy. And then I dropped my head. I don't want to go to Play. I don't want to go there, man.
I don't want that dump.
I left the South. My dad grew up. My dad's an artist. There's the thing called a swipe file, which is when an artist steals things. They take out paper from newspapers and logos and typography, and they keep them all together. And his swipe file was cartoons, little Orphan Annie, Jack Davis drawings, all the cartoons in the back of Playboy. And on the back of that cartoon was a lovely lady. Right? Centerfold, this and that. So there was a crazy connection there. So somehow, when I got the job as a webmaster, I went to interview, and about a week later, she called me back. She said, I got some bad news for you. You're overqualified for that webmaster deal. I said, okay, well, thanks for the interview. Oh, no, hang up yet. Listen, would you be interested in the magazine? Because we have an art director position open, and no one seems to be able to fill it. It's been open for almost a year and a half.
Wow.
So I said, okay, I'll come back. I had no idea what I was doing. So long story short is I had one interview in June, and then by the end of July, the guy that I interviewed, my first boss, Carrick Pope, said, Scott, you got to stop calling us every week. When the job comes out, you'll know. I mean, I was bugging the shit about it. And then some...
Persistence,
right? Hey. That'll get you further, right? You got to let them know.
That's a good
but I
lesson.
did it once a week. And then he got upset. But then this funky thing happened. It happens in your life if you're an artist. Chris knows what it happened with us a little bit, right? If you're in the flow and you have your intentions, right? You're not living the negative. You're living in the future, the potential, right? All of a sudden, the woman that I met at the webmaster meeting, the HR woman, I see her on the street. And then I see her at the post office. The third time I see her within 3 weeks of getting that job, I see her going into a restaurant that I'm going into with my friends. And I said, I'm not stalking. She said, are you stalking me? I said, no, it's how the flow happens.
Yeah.
And then about a week later after that, she called me in and said, why don't you interview with Tom? He's the art director for Hef for 45 years. So it was a wonderful interview.
I've done that too. Like you bought a car and you've never seen that car on the street until you own it, and then you're like, everybody has.
That's called your reticular activator. It's a part of your brain. It's a filter in your brain, because if your filters didn't work, you'd be overloaded, right? But the reticular activator, you buy a Porsche, you're like, everybody's got a Porsche, right? So reticular activator. Look it up.
Anything over 5 syllables, I just believe the person telling me.
I'm looking that up. That's cool. That's really cool.
So then in the interview, to finish it,
Joe.
having this interview with this guy, and he says to me, this is my first real life experience. And then I get this job in 14 years. 14 and a half, 14 3/4 somewhere. It's fuzzy. I did some freelance. But he looks at me and goes, well, your stuff is really great. I really like everything, but you never worked for a magazine before. And it was the question that somehow was going to stump me, right? I started to feel stumped. But I was such in the moment. I don't know what I said, but it was something to the effect of, I didn't know how to screen print before either. I didn't know how to do that. I said, I can tell you what, if I don't know how to do something, I'll know how to do it within an hour or 2 hours of putting my nose into it. That's how because that's what the software. If I'd learned cars when I was a kid, I'd be a master at it. But I didn't find my zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance till I'd read the book, and then this computer became that, right? It fascinated me so much because all of a sudden I didn't want to spend 8 hours drawing.
Yeah.
It's fun when you're a kid, you got all the time, but as you get older, you're like, no, I got other things to do. How about an hour of drawing? And then when I found the Mac, I said, oh, man, I can speed up my drawings. I can color it with the Mac. All of a sudden, it just took off. So
Scott's office at Playboy, if I could jump in, because I got to see it when he was still there, was smaller than this room. And it was like his studio. It's really kitschy. Like it has a bunch of cool artifacts, and posters and pictures and sports and entertainment and album covers. It had all that stuff, music, everything just collided, and it was almost like a small closet, but it was cool. But you could tell that it was the kind of place because when Scott gets really focused, he works by himself, and I'm a little bit different, but when Scott goes to work, he can bury himself in a cave for 12 hours at a time and do it. I don't have that kind of driver, but Scott can do that. Like, it's a man cave. I'm going in to edit this. I'll see you guys in 12 hours.
Right. It's like, but you know, it does take a lot. It's like, but it's both of you, because the other thing that's akin to drawing and designing is writing. You know, if you're going to write a novel, or like I saw this woman that I follow, she just finished a screenplay. I don't know how long it took her, but she wrote with an exclamation mark. You know how long it takes to write something of quality, maybe. And she wrote those Sing movies or something. The ones with Anna Kendrick, right?
Yeah.
But to see someone finish it, an artist do something, or even take a Prince, right?
Yeah.
Right. You're living. If you're an artist, you're two sides. You're inside creating it, and then you're outside expressing it and sharing it. Right. It's not always the same, but
I think I was reading Stephen King on writing, like his book about writing.
That book. Yeah. I love that book.
And he was saying he was like tries to knock out 10 pages a day.
Yeah.
Which sounds like small, but in the grand scheme of things, that's how the Stand was like damn near 1,000 pages or something like that. Oh my
God! Look how many things.
That's like
insane.
His day was, and he would describe his day, and we're all getting a little middle agey.
Yeah.
But his day was like, I'd get up.
A mountain of Coke, fucking a fifth of Jack Daniels, and then just
before he got help, before he had the muse. But he would, he'd go crank out 10 pages a day in his little office. He'd take a nap, quit at 2:00, go down for a long nap, get up, watch the Boston Red Sox play the game that night, go back to bed, and get up and do it again. So it's. That's a good day. That sounds like a good day to me.
Right.
Front load your day with work, get a nice nap in, feel refreshed, watch the Red Sox at night, go to bed, rinse and repeat.
That's the 4-hour work week. You ever heard of Tim Ferriss?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Tim Ferriss?
It sounds familiar.
You should read it. If you can't read it, just listen to Audible.
Okay.
On audible.com. Yeah, it's great. So Tim Ferriss describes the 4-hour work week, right? You know, who works 40 hours a week? The new
kids.
Nouveau. It's called nouveau riche, right? The new rich don't do that. The new rich have a backpack and they fly to Brazil and they sit at a coffee shop and they work for 3 hours checking emails, making sure that their T-shirt shop is working and that their followers are following it, that they're buying stuff and that their banking is working. And then they spend the rest of their time on the tour wherever they are. Right. So
the Coca-Cola of men's entertainment magazines, Playboy. It's there literally cannot be another time like that.
But it was way more than that. It was it had its own prestige. I mean,
that's what it had. It had a prestige.
Hefner founded it. Went to University of Illinois. Was founded out of Chicago. But as I said, my dad was in the advertising agency business, and he brought it home every month. So I'd, whatever, cliche, but I'd go through his stash and all that. But if you were in the agency business or the publishing business, the editorials were good in Playboy. The interviews were fantastic.
Sure, yeah.
And obviously the pictorials and the art and all that stuff was great, but it had its own prestige in terms of a writing style, commentary on entertainment.
What separated it?
Because before the zines, it was everything. Before there were zines, before you had a magazine about flying a drone, and then another zine about flying an airplane, another zine about buying equipment for your stereo, another zine about cooking. Right. Playboy was all those things. There weren't zines. Right. Playboy was the place you went to for music. Hey, what's the latest thing that'll get me laid listening to it? Yeah. What do I want to listen to after the laying is done? Clothes. Right? What should I wear to get the laying
Fashion,
going on? Right,
style,
cars.
grooming.
That's why it was called entertainment for men. Then the zines came along, this digital publishing, right? Oh, you're not going to get a career. No, in fact, my career is going to shoot through the roof. But what's going to happen is now it all got splintered. And Playboy went from that down to now to being a digital, trying to be a digital only. It only comes out 4 times a year now, right?
Well, that was who had to figure out that algorithm long form that These days, it's what you give a TikTok 3 seconds or an Instagram 3 seconds. Back then, they were like, all right, they're gonna give us 4 pages, and all right, now we got to hit it with Pam Grier. All right, they're gonna give us 6 more pages. Now we got to hit them with such and such or whoever was in
Matthew Perry, 25 questions with Matthew Perry or whatever. But they didn't figure it out, or they did too late, as Scott will tell you. They were the last to get the memo on the TikTok thing, and they just went.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. Hef said to my boss and to the photography boss, when he dies, the magazine's going to die. And his point was he was Playboy.
Major part of the brand.
He was, and his 2 sons didn't want to have anything to do with it at first, and then they sort of reneged, and now I don't know how they're involved. I quit following all of it, but it was he built something unique. But there's it's just like anything else. There's a whole side of the world that thinks just the opposite of what we do. Right? They'll call it what it is. It's pornography, right? In a way that's more digestible, and has a prestige to it because he associated it with this term Playboy. It was called Stag.
Yeah.
Of course.
Stop it.
Playboy.
But Scott, can I ask you something? You and I have had this talk, and this is going to sound gross to some people, and I don't want to offend anyone.
That'll be all right.
But when I started looking at Playboy, it was the 80s Playmates, and let's just say they had a certain realness to them.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they look like everyday women you'd see.
Yeah.
And they had the curves. They weren't perfect, but they had nice curves.
The girl next door.
The girl. Thank you.
That's the number one product of Playboy.
Right.
Jet Magazine used to have page 41 or 42 with the girl of the week. I used to take those out like Home Alone and paste them on my wall. But it was the chick next door. It was a chick from your high school.
That formula was so rock solid and so good. And then 2000s?
Yeah.
What was it, a conscious decision, or do you know what happened?
I think
your job upgraded, right?
I think the end result of the photo now was manipulated, meaning that they're not as natural as they used to be.
There's a lot of silicone.
A lot of silicone, a lot of shaving,
Shit, the editing, the post-production editing is so easy now.
Yeah, and all that back then wasn't really done with computers. It was done with light and photography. Most of it's done in the studio, actually, right? The girl with the one feature, the bigger ears, or some feature that doesn't look right at a particular angle is fixed by a master photographer who knows how to lay the light down, and you would avoid that. That's why they were so well known, because they're shooting naked women that look like they're accessible because of the girl next door, but it's in an artistic way, much
touched up, but
like a painting, right?
Yeah.
Like a Renaissance painting, right?
Will there ever even be like a beauty queen standard anymore? Because now
I doubt that.
It's really is the girl next door has.
Yeah, everyone's got their own Instagram.
Yeah.
And also, I have a certain look on my social media. I had pictures done right after Trump was elected. I used to have like a starving artist look on my Facebook and my Scott will know this. But then after Trump was elected, I said, I just want to toy with a rich white guy look. So I have
an ascot.
Right. When there's a certain way when I comb my hair that I look like Trump and all that.
Yeah.
So I have this picture of me looking like Trump with a nice white collar shirt, black blazer, and I look like rich white guy.
Yeah.
And so
you're like the man.
Right, the man.
Right.
And so I'm on Facebook, and all I do is with that cover photo, I get pinged on Facebook all the time from women all over the world that want to be my friend and talk to me, just because I look like a rich white dude who's about to retire. One of the nouveau riche. I just look like the guy that works a 4-hour week.
Right.
I created that look, and I just get girls pinging me all the time, wanting to be my friend. None from Chicago, of course.
Yeah.
But
no, you have an international presence, so why would they?
I don't know, but they're like, "Hey, how are you? Want to be? They're trying to be my friend.
You want to get married?
Exactly.
You want to sign these documents?
Fly to my country. Right. I want to take you to the best places.
You want to move my grandmother and a couple of my cousins?
Oh, have you ever watched those shows?
Guys, I'm not.
90 Day Fiance.
Yeah,
I hear about it. I haven't seen it.
You're right. It's like that, and I'm like, I'm not making this up. Everyone wants to find that rich guy to hook up with, and in 90 days.
Yeah. Let's put it together after the show's over. Let's get a scam going. Let's get a catfish.
I'm looking for a rich white guy. I got some upgrades in the studio I'm trying to help out with.
Yeah, sure. You could be our rich white guy. There's our money pot right there.
Put that blazer on. We got some stumping to go to.
Let's get a telethon going.
We need to get some sponsors.
Drop a dime on this bitch.
I'm affiliated with.
Get out your guitar. Let's make some real money.
So working there, did you learn, like, what did you learn about business as a whole, working for one of the top businesses of all time? Like, it's synonymous. It's synonymous with that world.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be here for a long time, all that I learned.
Sure.
But the number one thing that I learned, and that's why I kept the job versus advertising, because I had 2 weeks to get that bitch done.
Deadlines.
I had deadlines of 2 weeks. And when I say 2 weeks, not 2 weeks from today. I got 2 weeks from today to get March done. In January, we're working on March. I'm not working on January.
Yeah.
I'm not having some a-hole come into my office. Where the fuck is that? It has to be on the press tomorrow, right? I'm working 3 months ahead. That's what I learned. Yeah. If you work ahead, so Chris's point, right? I go into a studio. You know, artists go into studios 3 hours, 4 labs like you had in college, right? But then when you come out, everybody else benefits from your studio time. So I learned that working on a deadline and working way ahead of time will remove the stress, and you'll have plenty of room to fail before you get to that point where you're like, oh my God, there was a spelling mistake, right?
Gotcha.
There's so many mistakes going on. Plus, you can't operate. People that do that, they too many people, high turnover, attrition, they're gone. Playboy's people over there, 35, 40 years.
That's incredible.
Right.
On a monthly? Monthly deadlines. But once you figure out the process,
but they developed that over here. That's why it's
you're a
he had
machine.
more money than God. He had clubs. I mean, he was a maverick. You know, Hugh Hefner was the modern day. What's his name from Meta? What's his face?
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, Zuckerberg. Right. These are.
You think he was happy though?
Who?
Hefner?
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, that guy.
Because
3 girlfriends and you're in your early hundreds. You just got to deal with all those personalities and all those attitudes.
His problems are different from your problems.
Definitely.
But I'd rather have his problems than your problems.
You're probably right. I think you're right.
That. You got women suing you. You got playmates dying in your house.
It wasn't all glitz and gold, huh?
Oh, no, man. You got people overdosing in your swimming pool in the
Some
basement.
actor everybody knows and loves is acting like an asshole in the grotto because he's
You got to get him out. You got to get him out.
You got the aluminum foil on the windows. He's not coming out.
You got to get Steve McQueen out of your jacuzzi because he's about to OD.
Fell in love with him. She is in love with him.
So then the problems, right? The problems at that level, somebody like that, the problems are shielded from you. Yeah. Hey, such and such is going on. All right, we'll fix it. Right, fix it. No,
fix it in post.
Right? He had hundreds of people working for him.
Fix it in post. That guy could be a fixer.
My boss gave me a compliment one time. He came in. He goes, 500. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you bat 500 with Hef. That's a great number. That's a great number. Oh, because a lot of people would fail. You'd have to send him, when you send him a layout, you send him options.
Yeah.
I didn't send a lot of options because I put a lot of time in that. But I learned a very good skill. So the second thing I learned was not to take it personally. Because when he said he didn't like it, when I first started designing, I was designing 5 things. And he'd say, I don't like any of them. So that was okay. Someone was going to work in there. But then after a while, an art director said to me, you need to slow down. You're making us look bad. just do one design. Don't do 4.
500 is decent. Right? I think Steph Curry's 46% career.
But when he would come back, like I do 12 pages of the music poll. 12 pages where I hired an artist and I designed this poll and did all that. And then we'd send it off. He'd come back. Doesn't like it. Do something brand new. Go away from this. I would do it. Spend another week. Then he'd come back and he goes, no. Go back to the first one.
Yeah.
Go back to the first one.
And then, can you share any kind of anecdote or anything on the mansion itself out in Cali? Just your impression of it, generally.
Yeah, it was like going to Graceland. It's stuck in the 70s. I don't mean that in a positive way. All the bad fashion faux pas and the wood and the leather and the things that sort of look like they come out of a movie.
Extra fuzzy carpets for no reason.
Just in the wood.
Brady Bunch A-frame.
Just more like the Sybaris. Think more Sybaris.
Yeah.
Think more high cheese. Like we're gonna be in Lake Tahoe, and then we're gonna ski, and then we're gonna eat prime rib by the fireplace, and I'm gonna bang you all night while I'm drinking red wine. I'm gonna have a turkey leg in the morning. You know, that sort of. They had a weird. It's just a weird thing at the mansion. Just real creepy. Real creep factor, right? When you walked around there, though, if you don't know where you're at, you're like, oh, I'm in a really wealthy house. But it's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like putting a mansion on, I don't know. What's a good one? I don't know. If zombies lived there, he had a whole staff, but it's not the same Hollywood, right? It was a darker, they're nude. They're in the back rooms nude. They're in the grotto. They're nude. They're strangers having sex all the time. There's a lot of debauchery. I think of the mansion more like something out of the Bible.
Like everything wears
like
out
Sodom
its
and
welcome.
Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think of it as a sexy place I want to be. I mean, they have a pool that apparently it has bleach in it, but there's been a lot of people in that pool
you'd
naked.
have to.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a scum factor there that just isn't.
Well, everything that ripes gets rotten, right? So at a certain point, I'm sure it was the place.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I think the place on State. He had a mansion on State.
That place
was beautiful.
That place intrigues me more than the mansion out in.
the mansion.
Because that place had that. Remember you sent me that video a couple years ago of that kitschy TV show.
Playboy After Dark.
Playboy After Dark.
Yeah.
You remember these?
I think I heard about it,
But back when Bill Cosby was really
Sammy
cool.
Davis Jr.
Guys in their cardigans smoking and listening to jazz.
Bill Cosby had an idea for the
These
Playboy
guys
Mansion.
were
Go figure.
cool.
They were his best friends.
Those guys were cool. Sammy Davis. So they'd have this really cool look and music and jazz and all that stuff and comics and all that stuff. But
It was ahead of its time.
Yeah,
it was like
it
a
really
reality
was.
show. It's one of the first reality shows. Look it up, Playboy After Dark. I think there
Pretty
was
sure I remember it, yeah.
like over 20 episodes. It wasn't a lot.
I think I saw
maybe
it.
1 year. Yeah, it was really cool to see.
Yeah.
And they shot it from the offices right up there in the swank room.
Yeah.
Over at that was the building 618 Lakeshore Drive. Is that the number of it?
No, that mansion was on State.
Well, the mansion was on State, but the offices were in the Drake. In the Drake building, and that's where the offices were. That's where the Playboy logo was on top of the Drake.
That.
So that's where they had the high rise was up there.
Like if you had to,
across from the Drake, the building that Vince Vaughn lives in with the
I can't remember the name of it. Yeah,
it's got that light tower
Big
that they don't
brain
use,
tower,
the big
right.
lighthouse.
yeah. So say in 20 years from now, when somebody growing up is looking back on the 2020s. I'm imagining, I can't speak for them, but they might describe this as like fast, YouTube, TikToks, everybody is on a stream, everybody is doing music, everybody's multi-talented, technology was just doubling over. When you look back on the time period of like the 80s to the 90s, how would you paint that, like that picture for somebody?
I would paint it from a standpoint of culture, not from a standpoint of technology. My memories of the 80s, where we had good leadership and government, it comes down to this. So, like, the 80s, we had good government and good leadership, but we had to, because Scott and I were talking on the way over, we had a common enemy in Russia. You might be a little bit young for this, but if you remember growing up when Russia was the enemy, everyone in America had to cooperate together, Democrats and Republicans, North and South, Hicks and city people, everyone worked together because we knew that if we didn't, there was this big superpower out there that could kick our ass. 1989, 1990 comes around, Soviet Union falls. And we have like this decade of the 90s that was like a freebie. It was a free decade. It was a decade to party and celebrate and not get too serious about anything. And that decade is summed up in one word, Seinfeld. Like this TV show that was so funny. And it wasn't about anything. It was just funny, bizarre, everyday shit.
Wow,
You laughed your
okay.
ass off, and you had fun.
It was like a decade about nothing.
It was a decade about nothing other than the fact that the U.S. won the Cold War. We were the richest. We were the baddest. We were that. So you've got this sort of decade of experimentation and celebration. It wasn't like the 60s or anything like that, because people were making money, and Scott and I were learning our craft and doing our thing. But it was a really fun decade to not worry about anything, but to just work and learn and have fun and enjoy pop culture and all that stuff. And then, to me, that changed dramatically on 9/11. Then everything got serious. And the world took on a darker tone. And then things were a little bit more serious. They weren't as careful or carefree and that type of thing. So then everything became serious. And then technology came along. And as I said, along with technology, Facebook, cell phones. The good came with it. The bad came with it. And I'm still playing catch up in many ways. The start of my brain that's still trying to process 9/11 and what that's done to everyone. And there's things that have brought us together on social media that has been great. There's things that have freaking torn us apart on social media. So that's how I view the 90s turning into the 2000s. And, 90s had like Friends. Friends is great. Like Friends, living together. Oh, what's funner than that? Everything's fun and rosy, and Jennifer Aniston's cute, and this guy's cute. Does that show even work? No.
Yeah. Well, they had things like Martin. They had In Living Color. A lot of
That
guys
stuff
were
was
coming out
fun
of
too.
that.
I loved it.
But it was just fun for no reason. They had like Moesha. There's a bunch of people all getting along and do. But then they also had like Cops.
Right. Reality shows kicked in.
That's right when it started. Right? Reality.
That's when all the veils started to drop. That's what it was. So now
that's when we started putting cameras
kind
of everywhere.
That's why
behind the scenes. I want to see what it's really like.
Right, and then you find out. Well, I'd rather just watch the movie. There's a lot of times I'll avoid the BTS. We started doing BTS at Playboy a lot, and then once I discovered it, right, nobody had seen behind the scenes, and now it's like anything else. It just gets milked to death. You're tired of that song. You're tired. I don't care about the equipment. It still goes back to, do they entertain me, right? You want to show me something, but now everybody's seen it, right? We wear out our welcome so quickly now. We move on. We have no creativity, and we reinvent stuff over and over. I think the 90s into the 2000s, following Chris's comments, is a period of renewal. Like, in a year's time, we have spring and then we have winter. One is renewal of life, comes back to life. Summer comes out, the sun, everything grows. And then winter comes and death comes and everything dies and falls apart. But that's because it's a circle of life. You got to have all that death and all that destruction and all that things falling apart for it to be brand new again. So now we have all these young kids that grew up learning, and I don't use technology now. I call it a second language. I don't know Spanish, I don't know Italian, but this is another language. Now they know two languages, and they're adept at it from the minute they go, because they've got them in their hands when they're 12 months old, a year old, right? And now they're all woke. They're not woke. They've just discovered a world that didn't exist with all the bullshit we put in it. Right? They go, right? They go to the fact of, why are you pulling me over? Versus what I learned in the Air Force, don't ever question officer of the law. Don't, yes or no, sir. I would never say, why are you pulling me over? I just said, okay.
Yep.
I might say, what did I do wrong? I would say, I victimized myself, right? Do that. But but today's children, today's future adults are savvier, right? It's not that they talk back to their parents, but my kids have conversations with me that are are negotiations, and then I go, hold on a second. I'm not negotiating with you right now. I didn't start that. I'm in charge. When you're 18, well, I'm the negotiator. So now it's and this old way of thinking, the things we've learned about things that were hidden, right? The things we were talking about with Tyree and these and all these difficult things, the way humans go, that nobody's putting up with it anymore. Makes sense?
Sure, yeah.
Now there has to be action, but these things that used to be shoved under the rug, they're just too impossible. And we've lost the filter where you go, Trump was a part of that too. He had no filter. But once it wears off, you're like used to it, right? So it's no big deal. Is it a big deal to see someone die on TV? We're so numb to all these things, right? There's nothing left. So you have to protect your own world, and you have to. I don't know. It's difficult.
It doesn't seem like because everything's so quick now. Like an opinion can be given instantaneously now, where it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for just like I want to say logic, but that might not be necessarily the right word for everything to sit down and actually digest something. Form, have talks behind closed doors.
Hard.
Tables, huh?
It's too hard for people to do that. Yeah. I mean, when not that I'm a know-it-all, but one of my majors in college was international relations, and I went to public policy undergraduate at Michigan State. Part of my thing was I couldn't form opinions without making arguments, citing examples, writing papers and saying, this is why this policy works, this is why it doesn't. So my opinions come from studying things. If there's something that I don't know about and I'm unclear on it, and there's a lot that I'm not, I won't offer an opinion on it because I'm not schooled in it. But when it comes to stuff that I do know about from a very in-depth level, there's some, there's not a lot out there, but I will offer opinions. But you're right. Everything's a fucking hot take. What's the value in opinions?
Yeah. Well, you're basing your opinions off of your sources, right? What you choose to have your sources, whether that be
that's also
booking,
true.
books or whatever your sources are.
Well,
now you're born with a source, which is actually a lot of the time somebody else's opinion. And they're even though I'm not a spring chicken. Once something happens, I'll just be on my feed, and then I'll see somebody else that I might have thumbs up once upon a time. They already have their opinion on something that just happened.
Yeah.
And so now, before I even have my opinion fully formed, I'm basing it off of whether I agree or disagree with somebody I've never actually even met. Right.
Yeah, and the other thing is. And I understand the value of Twitter. I know my journalists use it and entertainment. I get Twitter. I'm not blown away by it. But not everything can be summed up in 25 characters. Public policy, foreign policy, what's wrong with this, what's wrong with that. It's complex. There's nuance to it. There's reasons why some of these problems exist. And I hate that everything in our society somehow gets dumbed down to 25 characters or whatever the limit is now. Not everything is meant to be dumbed down to that level. There are things that need to be talked about at length. And everything, there is complexity to things. And I fear that in our society, we've lost the idea to look at things constructively and with complexity in mind.
A lot more people here now than when we were born.
Yeah.
And we live in the number 3 city in the United States.
It's true.
There's a lot of people here.
It's true.
And this, it's tough.
So somebody breaking through all those voices, all those attention-stealing platforms, somebody breaking through that now to become the next
Trump,
who's who or whatever, does that make them better, like more equipped to have that stage anymore these days versus somebody back in the day, which they were competing with whatever it was. But now you've got to compete with a lot more people, a lot more things. So somebody who's able to cut through all that these days that's the adaptation.
That's the truth. But that's always been the truth. The things that go on are still the same. It's just the times have changed. Somebody wants to be a star, right? How much do they want? How persistent is persistency? One of their middle names, right? I think now it's just more difficult. But the cream always rises to the top, right? What we're doing here used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now you can go buy this whole setup at Best Buy if you choose. Or you can buy it at a music store. But you're immediately in the game if you want to be in the game. So what would make your podcast separate from Stephen King or from, a famous entertainer?
That's great to think about. But let me offer this theory. I'd be curious, both of you guys, if you have any thoughts on this. Is since we're in, and everything Scott said is true and you've said is true, this technology thing has changed everything. But I'm wondering if we're still, even though it's been 20 years or so, if we're still in the, that's the shiny new thing stage. And I'm wondering if there's a time, maybe 5-10 years from now, where wears off a little bit and it's not so crazy and it's not such a big deal to be on. I start to see people leaving Facebook. I left Facebook. I mean, I'm on it, but I don't check anymore. I just can't stand it. I mean, it's
old now, right?
Well, it's been politicized too.
It's been politicized, and I say this respectfully. I got a lot of friends on there that just document every moment of their lives, and they're not that interesting. I know everyone loves their kids. I know their kids are great. I just don't need. I don't need it documented every minute. But what I'm saying is, are we going to enter a phase where it wears off and people are just saying, yeah, I'm over that. We're done with this.
I think we are now because even though COVID's not over, as they say, we're still reeling from the effects of being down for 2 years, right? We're not, I mean, now Movie Pass came out. Do you remember that? Movie Pass was this thing that you could buy. You could go to free movies for a year and stuff. They just relaunched their card. I saw on the news this morning because they failed, but now that people are going back to the movies, people are going to use this Movie Pass, but I don't think they're going to because there's no content. There's no movies to watch because they didn't do anything for 2 years.
Well, you're also competing with my bed, not putting on shoes, and whatever food I got in the fridge. I got to get up in the snow to go where to watch what?
And well, again, to that, why would I go to the movie theater now? I'll make my own popcorn. I'll watch it in my underwear, and I'll watch it from right here because it's streaming the same day it comes out, right? But then you miss the experience. I think that's what's missing. The children of today, the adults of tomorrow are missing the experience.
Well, that has to get passed down, right? Because if you don't grow up with the experience, if your folks never care about imagining, but if your folks never care about you leaving your room or getting off your video games or doing whatever, then that's a foreign idea to you to go to the movie theater.
Did your mom make you go out and play? Did she come to you and
say,
Mike, you know, even though you're indoors,
I had to leave.
She couldn't get me back. She couldn't get me inside.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
She had a wooden spoon to threaten me
because she wanted her. I get it now. She just didn't want to see my fucking face. And listen, she just didn't want me around. She wanted to be doing her own thing. You know what I mean? Like get out the house.
Yeah, and she wanted you to be a kid and make friends.
Yeah.
Now you were a military kid. Was that hard?
Military. It's the only childhood I know. I'll say the weird thing is I kind of grew up in like a 1-parent / 2-parent household. So on any given moment, my pop could be gone for 6 months, 8 months, a year and some change, and sometimes he would be gone where it'd be like, I really hope he comes back. Like
because he was in intelligence.
He was actually involved in some important business. So, but so it'd be a certain section of time where it's just like me and my mom. And like when you're just growing up and it's just you and your mom, it's not that you can get away with more, but you could just get away with more.
maybe yeah. Plus, it's like you and her against the world. Maybe you trust each other.
Yeah.
More.
Well, here's
yeah.
Well, to that point, so my therapist, when I spoke about that, right? My parents were divorced, and I chose to live with my mom. My therapist said to me, which I never thought about. She said, "Maybe you chose your mom because." You didn't need to be around all that testosterone. Yeah. Maybe your mom, she said, maybe your mom, I don't want to use the wrong word, not exploited, not taken advantage, but maybe your mom relied on you because you had enough testosterone as well, right? Yeah. So I got away with a lot of stuff because she divorced her husband. I was the guy around the testosterone, right? Yeah. So you to your point, I got away with murder.
Yeah.
But none of it that led me anyway, other than the way I wanted to go. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah.
Drinking, a little bit of this, come in late at night. She gave me a speech and waited up for me and said, fine, kill yourself if you want, but I'm not going to fund it anymore.
Sure, yeah.
And then I had to go get a job, right? Then you start all this stuff living in the forest and taking care of yourself. Yeah. Right? It starts to come in your mind, and then that's what's missing today, right? It's going to be difficult. Like getting a job. I had a job when I was 15, 16. My son's not had a job yet. It's no fault of his own, but he's 18. He's never had a job, right? My daughter has. She got her first tax form, but she's She's way ahead of the curve, man.
Female, this generation and probably future generations, the females are way ahead of the males.
Oh my goodness.
My God.
That's another truth in life. That's always been true.
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
They got to look out for the kid. They got to look out for the. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're built in with the instincts that we don't have.
I believe it. The nurturing instinct, plus you got to be a disciplinarian and all that stuff.
Right. I mean, you think about the evolution of life. Men are, we're replaceable. We're just a tool. They come over there. All the things.
There's a particular connection. Obviously, you're gonna have with your mom, regardless of the kind of household that you grew up in. There's a particular connection, whether it's the for good or for bad. I was actually just watching something. Somebody kind of broken it down. I don't know if you're super familiar, but there was Tupac Shakur, right? He came out with a song talking about his mom. It was called Dear Mama, right? And he had a line in there talking about even though you were a crack fiend mama, to me you're always a black queen mama, right? Yep. But then you got like Eminem, and he talks about his mom popping pills, but he's doing it from a different angle. He's like kind of like talking down on her, using her for slander. And that's not it's the same story from two different perspectives, and it's their relationship with their mom. And both of those gentlemen, based off of that relationship and talking about it, put it in their art, were able to not capitalize might be the wrong word, but I mean they made an impact based off the relationship they have with their mom and their mom's relationship with drugs. Yeah. This guy, Tyree Nichols.
Yeah.
He was calling for his mom.
Yeah, I heard it too. Yeah. I know. She's 100 yards away.
Yeah. So
there is a connection. They made that comment on the news, right? But it's a different one. I asked myself, why was my mom the first one to pass away? So I've lost 3 family members. I've lost my mom and my brother of 11 years younger, and my father. But when my mom died, that's all I asked myself for 2 years. Why was she the first one to go? Why did I experience her? And then I asked myself the same question when my brother died and my father. But I would have assumed if you had asked me ahead of time, I would have said, I'll take my dad first. But I don't think I think God, the creator, whatever you want to call it, works in mysterious ways. And I asked why my mom was first, but she wasn't. It was a different kind of difficult, right, to prepare me for the other two. So it's interesting. The connection to your mom, I told my wife once that she was my God. And that was what somebody who said on the news said there's a godlike presence in the connection to your mother. I think that's true, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about, I could cite my own examples, but I'll just keep it really simple. When I look at athletes that didn't have the strong male father around, and that their moms raised them, but also raised them well and put them in football put them in baseball. And these athletes get out, they turn out amazing. They're great football players or basketball players, and they just treat their mom like a queen. They buy her a house. I love those stories. It's inspiring.
Yeah, of course.
DeMar Hamlin's mom, right?
Yep.
Right up there in front, right? Making sure.
Because you gotta have, my dad was a good man. He had a good heart, but he could be tough. I know your dad was a military dad, probably tough. Your dad,
real tough,
real tough. Discipline. But without that nurturing, the other side of it, if you don't get that other side of it, you could go the other way.
Well, I was lucky in that, right? Because I got that all my life from my father playing sports, got all the discipline, but then. Then my male figures were my coaches, right? Where you go to the sports, basketball, football, you excel at that. But you've got your mom, polishing and sanding all the shit off of you, right? And making that rock a lot smoother.
It's different lessons you're gonna learn.
How to dance with your girlfriend at the first prom.
Yep.
Right? If you're lucky, privileged enough to have both of those in your life, right? Your pop's just gonna teach you different lessons, and his love is gonna be different, right? Like my pop used to take me to the movies. But from as far back as I can remember, he would always, when we get to the movie theater, if it was just me and him, he'd always make sure there's a chair.
Oh, no.
Like, I sit here, then there's an empty chair, and he sits there. And it's just like...
You felt disconnected, right?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. No? Like, at a certain age, we just started doing that, and I was like, all right, I guess that's what guys do.
Yeah, I did with my cousins and my brother. But I always sat next to my parents.
No, but if I go to the movies with my mom, then yeah, we're gonna be sitting next to each other. It's just a different thing. So yeah, like when I was growing up, like my pop would be gone a lot of times, but when he comes back, it would always, because I used to get in a lot of trouble. It would always be like a trial date, like I was on house arrest, and now the judge is coming home. But the whole time I was with the corrections officer.
Right. You were the judge and jury.
You had an advocate.
Yeah. Well, the corrections officer has the key to the cell. And pepper spray and a baton.
My parents had one tool. It was a piece of leather with a metal attached to it. And sometimes they held up their pants.
Yeah.
Most of the time they were whipping my ass with it. Boy, that was horrendous. To get your ass beat, right? And then you live on a base, and then next door you hear some whining or some wailing. You go, "What's that?" And you go, "That's Johnny. He's getting his ass whipped." Because people in the services, man. That's a different line of discipline. Yes, sir. I still say yes, sir, no, ma'am. And I have people say, "Don't say that to me." I said, "I can't help it, ma'am."
I can't help it. Yeah.
Right. It was a product of living in that lifestyle, right?
So why do you think it is so easy to just forget that there's a big stamp on the front of a folder that says classified, top secret, do not remove? And you just put it in your backpack and leave it in your garage. Why is that so easy?
Discipline and it's three. And I hate to say it, guys. I don't want to go the racial right. It's three old white guys who
just
stealing soap from the bathroom and a towel.
Thank you.
And a salt pepper shaker. When I was a kid, I'd be at a restaurant. We'd be at a Stuckey's on the side of the road, right? Because we're driving from one base to the other. We'd be at the dinner, and my dad would go, "Hey, Patty," to my mom. "Hey, Patty. Get your purse out." And I'd go, what do you mean? But we get to, I'd ask the question, "What are you talking about?" But they wouldn't listen to me. I just see her get the purse, and she put it here, and my dad would do like that. He'd grab the stuff off the table, and they'd look around, he'd just drop it into the purse. He just drops it, because people have to have mementos. Mementos are portals, like in Harry Potter. So if I take that towel, I'll remember that towel from that hotel because I hooked up with this girl, or I'll remember from because I got that job, right?
How many serial killers got caught because of that?
But listen. But to finish the answer to just one more thing to add on the answer to the question: why was Barack Obama so fucking squeaky clean and disciplined?
Squeaky clean. He visited the fireplace in the last week and a half.
Because he had to be for that man to get elected president. He had to be flawless.
Well, that's magical.
He had to be so disciplined. He had to be the good father, the good husband. No skeletons in that closet. People went looking, couldn't find anything. That guy had to be disciplined. So, you know what I mean? Like, he just had to be. And the other two, like you said, stealing soap from Scott's absolutely right. It's like,
well, when you're the first of anything entering into an arena, especially if it's the odds are against you, then you have to be. Because I hear stories, even though I wasn't watching baseball at the time, I hear stories that Jackie Robinson wasn't the most athletic black baseball player that could have went to the pros at that time, but he fit all the I mean, Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, Nat King Cole probably fit into the Rat Pack a little bit better, but there was something about Sammy Davis Jr. I'm sure that when you added the whole thing together, but once that foot's in the door,
Yeah, I would say to that comment, I would say to all those people that made it, ultimately they're the one. Sammy Davis Jr. He got there by his own methods, right?
Yeah.
He got there on his own accord. He's super talented, right?
Yeah.
I think we were talking about that the other day. When you're super funny, you can get away with some crazy shit. If you're super talented, you can get away with even more crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
If you can impress somebody and make them look up to you, right? That's powerful stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when you can do it at a level where millions of people are looking at you like The Rock, right? Then you go, wow, man, or Barack Obama. Yeah. These are people that didn't just lead good lives, but they knew what it took, and they were raised again by their mother, right? Given
said,
a really strict adherence to how to be a good human being, right? But then at somewhere along the line, these men also learned, well, I can be a good person and I can also be a businessman.
Yep.
Right?
By far.
And that seems to be the journey that I'm under, not wearing the emotional not wearing the emotional, what do you call that thing underneath? Not wearing the emotional thong all the time and just, going bare and saying, I don't care, just fuck it. I heard one of those reels the other day. A guy was on a reel just saying, sometimes you just have to say fuck it. That's all. His whole reel was saying, just say fuck it. I said, okay, I'm going to say fuck it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are we talking about?
We're talking about being the first, and
the first is memorable.
But it is memorable.
The 22.
All the rules he talked about didn't apply to Michael Jackson, however. But other than that,
there's a book you should look up, and again, I like Audible. The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. I read it when I first moved to Chicago.
Okay.
And it simply says what he just said. If you're the first at something. So if I look at the Pepsi and give me a Coke, well, that's a Pepsi. Yeah, but you know what I mean. Can I have a Kleenex?
Oh, he's
Kleenex
so right.
is a brand. It's not a tissue. It's a tissue. It's a brand. When you're the first, and then
my mom called everything Nintendo.
Right. So the thing I remember from the book that's fun to say. I say, who's the first individual to fly the Atlantic? Who was the first individual to fly? Right. Okay. He was the first person to. Who was the second person?
All right, that's harder.
Do you know it?
I don't know who it is. Do you?
Okay, let me ask you another question then. Who was the first woman to fly the Atlantic solo?
Amelia.
No, she didn't make it.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Miss Amelia Earhart. She was the first woman. You know who the second person to do was?
Huh.
Amelia Earhart.
See?
She wasn't the first. She was the first woman, but she wasn't the first person. But, you're right. So being the first at something is very important.
Yep.
It's a part of what I learned in this. So when I moved into Studio 28 to Segway, right, I was already thinking about all of this. I started streaming right before the pandemic hit because I knew this is where it was going. Now everybody had to Zoom. Now it's everybody. When I first started and put these cameras in there was the people that were doing it had a lot more money and it seemed like on a different level. But now it's right up there with just being able to have the phone, right?
What draws you in? What makes a good podcast? What holds your attention?
The information given by the person being interviewed in the podcast, the person doing the interviewing has got to be. I don't care if they're a business person because everyone's doing a podcast. Entertainer, business person. Everybody. This person sitting in this chair, I demand one thing of that person: you have to be intellectually curious. In other words, when these microphones turn off, you still got to be the guy that's trying to go. You were at Michigan State for 4. What was that like? I just want a very curious person, someone. You can have a journalism background, but if you're just really curious about people and how they were formed, that's the most important thing. And if you can draw that out of people, this one I'm hooked on now, Diary of the CEO. This guy's talking to Richard Branson. Richard Branson's great. Like he just comes from such a different background, raised by his mom and all that stuff. It's someone who can draw the great stuff out of someone. Yeah. That's what I like on a podcast because, entertainments are cool. We all love entertainment. We all love athletes.
Right.
But getting to the bottom of the story of how they became who they became, that's gold. That's gold.
So is this live right now?
Like live, like broadcast?
Like live. We're pre-recording it.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna come out at it's just gonna get posted up, but it's not streaming like right now.
Yeah, it's not streaming. Yeah. Right. That's what I like about podcasts. So I've jumped around and I haven't gone back on there probably 4 months. But Twitch, right? Twitch is an interesting platform because I think you can. With Twitch, to me, it's interesting with the podcast because you can see the people, right? Yeah. And it's weekly. Right, it's like watching a TV station. Yeah. It's the new future. When I saw ESPN do the football games with Peyton and his brother, and they had it set up like a Twitch stream with 2 screens over here and then a larger screen, and then another one for a third guest. You realize that today's technology is really influencing the future, right? Yep. We don't just watch on our couch anymore. We watch while we're pooping. We watch while we're waiting for the dentist. Everything's a hole into your head.
And you could just pause whatever you're watching. Go do what you got to do and then come back to your show. It's not waiting once a week and then, you just missed. Oh, my goodness. You just missed that big show that everybody's going to be talking about for the next week.
Or you had to sit through Hee Haw just to get the fucking.
Or somebody taped over it. Yeah.
That's the other thing that we're missing in our
We're missing
society.
patience.
Patience, yeah. The ability to say, I have to wait a week to figure out how this season ends.
Anticipation. Remember the Heinz ketchup commercial?
Anticipation.
Well, Netflix, and I want to say those other streaming platforms just reversed and started adopting that again. So they're getting away from the binging
with
thing.
The Last of
they're
Us.
not going to put out. They're not going to put out all 15 episodes now. So you just squeeze right through them.
Yeah, they did that with the Star Wars, where you have to wait for that next episode.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's powerful. I mean, that's cliffhangers. That's the way it's always been, right? Good story.
Yeah.
You got to wait for it. Let it develop.
Because that anticipation is like the seasoning on it, right? If it just goes and then so now somebody's like, did you watch that whole season of such and such and such? And they're sitting on the whole story, and then they're waiting. They'll give you maybe a day and a half before they just go, all right, fuck it, you're not gonna watch it anytime soon. Here's everything that happens.
And if you really love a show, and there's not that many that I fall in love with, but when you really fall for one, those characters that you do spend an hour with every week are like your freaking friends. And you get to know them because you spend so much time with them. And that part kind of plays in too. And I don't know that you get that with binging. Just binging. I'm like, wait a minute, I want to wait a week to see this guy again. You know what I mean?
Well, now we're going to watch you in your day-to-day life, right? Because you're going to be on your socials, a majority of them, and I'm going to see if I'm into you like that and I tune into all your platforms, I'm literally kind of watching you live your life. So if I do see you in real life,
you're living your life through them like you have, right? When you're in a movie and you imagine to be the superhero. But my dad, in his last few years on Earth, wasn't out of the house because of COVID. He didn't have anybody to talk to. He didn't have any relationships. I suffered through, and then I became a fan of Below Deck and 90 Day Fiance and all the other things. I would watch entire seasons because then I realized my dad would be so content that he made love to that woman. And then he got to break up with that guy, right? And that boss really got on her ass, and they got to have that wonderful dinner aboard the boat, right? And there's what's his name's son who's all drunk on the boat, and there's a famous baseball player. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
You create connections that are just they're not real, but they affect people because it creates the same serotonins and dopamines, just like being online does.
Sure does.
Just like it does in real life.
Getting a like on something still is a small hit of dopamine, not as much as it was, but I used to log on and see who liked my comments. But let me flip it back to you. Speaking of being curious, we all come at this from different sides of things, but you're really unique. And I don't know that many of them. I'm not that familiar with the culture. I wish I knew more about it. I wish I had the balls to do more of it. You're a stand-up comic. So how does that filter, or how does that approach what you do or what you're trying to accomplish? Because there's not that many stand-up comics that can transcend or cross over into the technology like you have and want to be a good host like you have. Some can pull it off, but you know what I mean? It's not a natural thing for a stand-up comic to also be a guy who hosts like that.
I think
in other words, Jay Leno may have been a great stand-up comic. He was a terrible talk show host because he wasn't engaging or curious. I mean, was he good at the monologue? Did he excel at that part of Oh yeah, to come out and do a monologue every night, no one was better. Kill it. 10, 15 minutes, and then you might as well turn the show off, because who wants to watch Jay Leno talk to anybody because he's not engaging? Hey, you were in that movie? I didn't know you were in that movie. What was it like being in that movie? I didn't know you were in that movie. I was in that movie.
I've seen Jay Leno in long form, and he's got some of the greatest stories.
I've heard great things. I've heard nothing. I'm sure he's great. I've never seen him live, but I'm from the
people. He's a personable person. I met him once, and the Playboy gig really had a nice little side things like meeting Jay Leno, things like that.
I'm sure.
Little side gigs.
The question is to you, though. How do you come at this?
I think one of the top qualities a good comedian should have, or a comedian in general across the board, is you have to be curious. You have to question everything, because then you're looking for similarities, you're looking for parallels, you're looking for things that don't add up, you're looking for opposites, you're looking for things to talk about. You're over analytical to a point, and it's a short frequency switch to people, because I'm genuinely interested in people, like everybody's story. Like some people have 1-2 episode stories, one tight season, one massive long, you know what I mean? Some people just have a movie, some people have syndication. But regardless, it's always a story that I'm curious of, and just figuring that out. And I mean, it's just a natural jump, because I'm just a slave to attention. So I'll do it on camera or whatever. But when I'm talking, or when I'm asking you guys questions, like I generally am looking for your input and like the way you're looking at things and processes in it, because then that makes me feel more informed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. And then it just translates. So if you guys were to say something like incredibly funny, then I'm definitely just gonna steal it from you, use it on stage when I'm out of town.
Like a good comic should.
like Picasso.
Give you no credit.
Like Picasso.
Give you no credit whatsoever. But yeah, no, it's I don't know. This is just a good conversation. Is there really anything better than a good conversation?
No.
When you're looking for friends, when you're looking for a relationship, you hope that you have a good relationship with your family members, and it really comes down to a good conversation.
And I guess that's what I was trying to say to you guys and Scott. That was Chicago in the 90s, is you were always out meeting people, but you'd be at bars, or you'd be at parties, or you'd be at the beach, or you'd be this and that.
Yeah.
And I always had, no matter where I was, because Chicago was this attracting place from people all over the Midwest, from the South, wherever. I always had great conversations and great experiences in meeting people. It was like that was my dopamine hit. Was like, was I making money? Was I banging chicks? Was I doing any of that stuff? No, but I was
having
just
a great conversation.
I was just having a nice talk with some people. If Mickey Rourke lived in Chicago in the 90s, he would say, I just went out and talked to people the other night. But no, but that's what I did, and that was great, and I loved it.
We were also younger, and that was the age of, and at that time, the city was going through another resurgence, right? It was very empty. It was very empty, right? Look at all the buildings that ended up down there near Michigan Avenue and Lakeshore Drive. None of those tall buildings were there.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's all brand new. They moved everything south too, right?
Yep.
They moved everything south. It just keep creeping up. Moved it farther west. When I moved here, you didn't want to go to Wicker Park, they said, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's a little mecca of hipsters, right?
Yep.
All these places keep changing, but the city just keeps growing.
Oh, that's why they busted my window and took my iPad
What?
to Wicker Park.
Yeah, my roommate goes,
Where?
Huh?
I lived in Wicker Park.
It's the fanciest, nicest street in the world that they took my stuff
Wolcott? Which one?
to.
I
don't
know
even remember
Walcott.
what
I
street.
lived off of
I'm still
Walcott.
tracking it.
It's awful.
Yeah.
My roommate had a Nike box in his car. Just the box.
Oh, it's over.
They smashed the window for the box. It was the first time I'd ever seen that. And I looked at the smashed window and I looked at the box and went, oh, they thought there was a pair of shoes in there.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I'll tell you guys a little secret. In
It was you.
In the part of puberty, where males get hooked on sneakers and shoes.
Yeah.
I skipped that part, and I never had it.
Never.
Yeah.
But in the past couple of years, I've been hooked on. I don't have the money to go out and get the ones I want to get.
Yeah.
But like, there's these sweet Jordan low tops that came
Oh,
out.
yeah.
I didn't even know he did low tops.
Yeah.
And I gotta have a pair of those Jordans, man.
Yeah.
And for 110, that's not actually that obscene.
Ask your parents, ask your mom for Christmas.
My mom probably.
And she'll say, "What are you, 12?"
Oh, my daughter wanted a $400 pair of headphones. $400 pair of headphones.
That's what it is now.
I said, get out of here. I don't even pay that much. $99 tops. We're not going beyond that. Because beyond that, you're not getting
You
the
can
sound
get
difference.
go to Best Buy and get the Dre's, the Beats for 100.
Yeah, I know, but you know, I don't know. That's another ripoff. Those
Just because
headphones.
It only goes so far, and then
It's like anything else. Have you ever heard of LED?
Yeah.
I think so. I thought those were lights.
The least effective dose. Another book I read. Guy talked about lifting weights, right? How many pounds of weight do I have to lift to increase my chest size? Do I have to do 3 repetitions of 100, or do I have to do 20 of 30? right?
Okay.
What's the least effective dose with the maximum results? I apply
Right.
that towards business, right? Do you need to go and my mother's husband said that to me when I was in college. He goes, "You want to get laid?" I said, "Well, who doesn't?" He said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you how. You want to know how?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Go into the bar and ask the first woman you meet. Just ask her, you want to have sex?" And then after that, I want you to keep asking. Keep asking.
Yeah, he's
and
not
I didn't know
wrong.
what, and I didn't know what he was talking about. He goes, eventually, out of 100 women,
You'll hit.
you're going to hit 2 or 3. Then I go, let's go. But I said, Ted, I can't get past 1. I couldn't ask one person that. He goes, well, when you learn how to do that, then you'll be successful. Right?
You have to ask for the order. When I first got my sales job, this guy he was a Chicago guy, Michael Tirana, big round Italian guy. He was Mr. Chicago too, and he told me a brilliant thing, and it works.
He said coffee's for closers.
Right. He said it better though, and it pertains to politics, business, entertainment, sports, whatever. He said something brilliant. He said the answer is no unless you ask.
Right.
You have to ask. And when it comes to women or business or anything, gotta ask. Gotta ask for the
Arthur
order.
Kretschmer, the famous editorial leader of Playboy, said to me once, he goes, well, let's give him a chance to say no.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, ask.
Ask.
Ask him. If you don't ask, you're just going to assume. And if you assume, you may not get your answer.
Yeah.
You just ask. Let him say no.
If he says no, he says
So
no.
no, right?
You just go next.
That was a brain
Next.
opener for me. That
Yeah.
I stepped up to. I mean, it's not impressive, but I remember thinking about that comment.
That's some of the best advice I've heard in a long time.
When's
Speaking of asking,
Can we ask you something?
by all means.
We got a couple of really good Starbucks coffee riding on this.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I
Do you
forgot
mind
about
sharing
that.
something with us?
Share some.
Because
Open book.
Okay, thanks.
It's a salon off
Open-
of 48th
open
and
booking.
Cottage
No,
Grove, in
no.
case you guys are looking to get your hair twisted.
You're young. You have a lot of energy,
Mm.
but you're not that young.
Sure, yeah.
I said
Mm-hmm.
40. Scott said 35.
Yeah. Definitely older than both of those numbers.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
What?
F out.
We both lost?
Well,
Yeah,
I'll buy you a
absolutely.
cup. I'll buy you a cup.
There we go. That's what I was looking for.
You
That's
get
what
the
I was
cup.
looking for.
I was way off.
Get
You're-
the-
No. I'm definitely 42 and a half.
Oh, okay. All right.
That is a young
Yeah.
42, my brother.
That
That is a young 42.
Roll of the dice, my friend.
All right. They, and that's another thing when we talk about all this. A lot of men aren't successful until their 30s and 40s. They're not successful unless you're an athlete or something in a different. But most men find their peak in the 30s and 40s. And I don't want to say peak, but you start to find who you are and what you want to do. And
I've always been jealous of the people that decide what they wanted to do really early and then just stuck with it. Because you're just bound to, you're going to hit a level of success.
Yes, you are. But you're
The
also
sooner you start on something.
But what's the opportunity cost? I thought about that, and I, for the most part, agree with you. But Scott and I went the opposite. We said, okay, we could go the improv or the entertainment route, but what's the opportunity cost of not learning about business and publishing and learning all that stuff and all the stuff you miss out on? Are you? I know that it's tough, but yes, you're right. You would reach a level of success. Scott and I were talking about it in the car on the way over here. Oh, that guy's writing a movie. Oh, that guy's doing that. Oh, good for them. Good for them. Oh, that guy was a dick. Fuck that guy. That guy was good. He deserves it. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. It's a never-ending conversation. But then I'm like, but God, I became smart. Like, I learned about the world. I understand things that people can't see. I can intuit things that people can't figure out. I'm smarter and wiser than a lot of people.
You got to get through a lot more
But I'm not getting
no's.
laid and I'm not making any money.
It's doing it. The younger you are, it helps you to get through the no's, to get through all the rejection early. Because if you take it down to like a poker level, right? When you're young, your youth is your chips, and you got a big bank of them. So your strategy is different. You can bet on a lot more hands, and they don't necessarily have to be the best 2 cards. If what lays on the table works, then boom, you might suck out with 7 deuce offsuit. But when you're older, you got to be real strategic on how you betting those chips. Because if you lose half your pot, ain't no more buy-ins, buddy.
When you are wiser and older, time is your asset. Time is your tool, and you can splurge with it or you can disregard it. But
Yeah.
no matter what happens,
You respect time
you're
more.
going to get older and you're going to die.
Yeah,
It's just going to happen. So that's where I am in my life right now. I saw something Elon Musk posted and it got me thinking. Then I heard it a few other times. I don't really believe it fully, but I get the essence. And the essence is of the statement. Nobody cares about you.
It's true.
So why not give it a fucking try? You want to be funny and you want to entertain people, and you are, and you do, right? But when they leave there and they've gotten their laugh they need, they've gotten why they came there, they do not care about you. They don't care how hard you work to get famous, or if you live in a car, if you drive a Porsche down the street, they may see you and go, oh, he's got a wonderful life. They don't care about you.
Sure.
And I posted that on Facebook because I thought of that theory, and Chris responded to a friend of mine that I haven't, not even a friend, an associate in my fraternity, wrote, I don't think that's true. And I left it up for discussion. I don't usually do that. But I think the essence of it, like a lot of people cared about my father. But after he died, there weren't a lot of phone calls.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And my brother...
It's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
That
Right.
holds true. I think that might be the golden rule.
Right.
Because you're right. We're all going to die and we're all going to pass on.
Yeah.
There's things that you want to leave a nice
Time will
life.
definitely go on.
But with...
Yeah, you know what? The day after you die, the people
Yes.
or the day after your funeral, you know what everyone's going to do?
Right.
They're going to
Keep
get
on
up and
going.
they're going to go to
That's
work.
right. So that
McDonald's
was the
is
point,
not
right?
shutting down.
So if you're not doing what you want to do and living the life that you want to live, then don't fucking cry to me and don't blame don't blame everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to live a life that you're pleased, I think I've been lucky. I've been fortunate and blessed, but I've always had that thing that I don't want to work for other people, because every time I work for somebody else, I don't like them. I don't like the way they do it, and they don't empower you.
Yeah.
My job at Playboy, the reason I was there for so long was because they did just the opposite.
Yeah.
It was the most dysfunctional place full of weirdos and crackpots, but they were so good.
Yeah.
And from the top down, not Hef. He's out of that picture. The management and the people that led it, they weren't the greatest, but they made it a joy to go. I told my boss I loved coming to work.
I had a similar experience. I worked at a company called Morningstar.
Yes.
And I wanted to, like we all creative, I wanted to be a host. I wanted to be a TV guy. I wanted to be on SNL. I wanted all that stuff. I wanted to be a performer. I was young. I was good looking. But I ended up at Morningstar, like Scott ended up at Playboy, heard about a job opening. And then because the culture is so strong, because they empowered you and you have the confidence, what you're capable of is unbelievable when you're empowered. I ended up being quoted by the Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, New York Times on complex financial issues that, this is happening, bonds are getting cheaper, stocks are going up.
Okay.
Analyst at Morningstar, Chris Kelsch, says to invest in this, this, and this. And I was like, wow, like I really did it. I learned the financial industry.
Moving the needle.
Was moving the needle. And I always wondered, because when I grew up, went to Michigan State, good public school, all that stuff, but I always wondered, could I compete with the elite? Like, how smart am I? Do you think you're smart?
I think I'm more clever.
But you're smart. Do you think you're smart?
Let me
Because when
let me put it this way. Let me answer the question. I was voted the most intellectual of the 8th grade. I got a full-size picture in the yearbook. That's how I answer it.
Right, but we're smart enough at this and to self-start and to know, like you said, that no
To try.
to try, smart enough to try,
And then we try,
and dumb
and then
enough
we
to
get,
think,
and then we're dumb enough to believe our own lies, right? Because the
Right,
body tells you you're not good enough. Your body has to change because the body is the memory of the mind, right?
Right,
if you're not feeling 100%, you can't attack these things.
Smart is like it's too solid a word. I don't know if it really could, because you could be smart, you could be funny and never make it as a comedian.
Right.
It takes like resilience, it takes networking, it takes attitude, it takes luck. So smart is gonna get you XYZ, but
right. So I was
may not get you the
curious
whole
about
alphabet.
that. I was really curious about that. So when I ended up in Morningstar, when I became an analyst, I'd be working this far from this guy went to Harvard. Sure. And this guy went to a Big Ten school.
That's a different kind of smart.
But I wanted to say, can I compete with those people and do the same jobs that they do? The answer I found out was yes.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Because everybody's opportunities are different. Everybody's chemistry is different. That one moment that changes, right?
Right.
Hey, you want to work at Playboy? I don't know. maybe. That wasn't my answer. I had been looking, said, I got to change my life. I cannot afford to live in this apartment anymore.
Right.
And trying to chase clients and then do the accounting. I've been doing it for 7 years. I'm done with it, man. Somebody else take over. And that's what happened. You change your intention, right? You look towards the future. You'll manifest your future. It's very simple. You either live in the present moving forward, or like my poor brother and my other brother, they live in the past. They don't think about, they were so much potential, but they got, as Chris said earlier on, wounded men, right? We're programmed and we're young, and then all of a sudden we're out here and now we're trying to do it. I've succeeded so many times. I have a great experience with it, but there's plenty of other failures ahead. I fail every day trying to make this new time in my life different, right? I still have children that, I want to make sure my children take care of, and I want to make stuff. I can't sit still. And I know when you sit still, you die.
You're making stuff right now too, right?
We
So
are.
tell us, tell the folks, the viewing fans out there, what else you got going on? So you have the Dog and Pony Show. You have, I think both of you are in a movie venture. Tell us a little bit about that before we get out of here.
It's called Chicagoland, and we developed it. Chris and I developed it. I was shooting Chris, and then I said, I'm more cinematic. I want to see moving pictures. I hadn't played with that part of my life, so I said, I'm taking great pictures of him. It's in Chicago. It's very moody. I said, why don't we get you a bad guy? I don't know why I said that, just because Chris is an every guy. He looks like a good guy. But I said, let's find you a bad guy. So I called an actor friend of mine that had done some modeling for Playboy. He's also a semi-pro basketball player, so he modeled for NCAA that I designed for 2 years. And the last time I saw Keenan, he said, hey, keep me in mind if you ever make one of those little projects you were telling me about.
Yeah.
So then I called him up and invited him, and then I met this other fella, and I developed this short episodic concept with Chris called Chicagoland, based on these three men that are in a different status of their life: low status, middle of the road status, and a high status. And I said, because at the time in 2014, I said, this city's getting really violent. It's starting to get more violent. And I'd like to make a comment on the violence, but I don't know how to do it. And I don't know that I want to be front and center of that comment. So maybe I could do it creatively. I said, what if we tell a story? So we started to invent this story of these three men against the backdrop of violence in Chicago. With a lot of opportunity for past and presence, right? Time dashes and things like that. And it's called Chicagoland. And it's simply about Chris's character, who is released from jail after 20 or 20 plus years. And he's sort of been in a time warp, right? He gets released when the first iPhone is out and starts to experience technology. So it's a little bit of fish out of water. And then we have a bad guy that's at the top of the world. Then we have a young guy. So some things I started to experience. We came up with it in 2014, and we launched it on Indiegogo just last year because a lot of interruptions and a lot of things needed to work themselves out. And now we're in a place where I just had to get started. I found out, this is another secret I learned, is if you just make something, the rest of it will take care of itself. So you're making this podcast. Chris started making podcasts, video casts with me, and the photography back in 2014, and all we do is continue to make stuff. But the stuff we've been making is for other people. And we both decided Chicagoland would be something where I can make it for myself as a producer and a writer and a director and an actor, but then I can, like I learned in improv, making films and making stories are team efforts. And I don't have to be the guy that does everything because it's too hard to lift up a large story. I can just have a role that I'm really good at. I'm really good at the visuals. So that's where I've sort of taken my place.
And that's what I admire about you. I don't have the discipline. I don't think. I'm probably wrong, but I don't have the discipline to be the stand-up comic working alone and developing. I came up with Scott, and Scott and I came up with, there's something fun about working on teams, provided you're with the right people.
Right,
and it's,
right.
you share ideas. This idea sucks. Let that one go. Like that one. Keep that. Set that one off to the side for a second. I need to think about that. It's a nonstop exchange. Yeah. But I don't know that I could do what you do. That's another animal. It is.
I mean, with acting, it's because acting storytelling, and it's easy in my mind to sit down and go, that doesn't look so hard. You say the lines. You raise your eyebrows.
It's not.
Man, look.
Don't spend money on classes and Stanislavski.
Acting is tough. It is not as easy as it is not as easy as it looks. because you get in your head. It's real easy to get. I found that it's easy to get in your head.
Well, that's true. Actually, what he said is true. But
because you're reading somebody else's dialogue and you're depicting somebody else's emotion, a different kind of, like a whole sheet of emotions you could possibly go through and saying one line. When I'm on stage and I'm doing jokes, I know my lines and I know my emotions. So
right, you're giving us your experience versus someone
else's.
Right,
exactly.
right? That's cool.
But the acting, I had an acting coach, and once he did that to me, so I was doing a scene from Chasing Amy on this class here in Chicago, and I was giving the sign to the other. I was giving a little speech to the other actor in the scene and all that, and there was a point in the scene where you're supposed to push the other guy, like because I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
And I do the scene, and then he goes, "Cut." I got to tell you, man. You're trying too hard. He's talking to me. He's talking to my friend. Acting is reacting. That's it.
Yep.
It ain't that hard. Let me show you what I mean.
Yep.
Give me the line. So I give him the line, and he hits me. I mean, really hard. But I'm not hurt. He does it in a safe way. He knows what he's doing. He bumps my chest and makes me wake up. And then my response, he goes, "That's acting. Now do it again." Yep. Right? Because you're not hiding it. Yeah. You're not making up, "I'm wounded. Oh, this is my idea of being wounded." I'm wounded because it really happened in your mind, right? It's make believe.
It's the difference between acting and just being, and great actors just be. They're not acting.
Yeah.
Especially on film.
They're not spending any of that shit going, "Oh, what are my emotions and what does this mean?" No. Great actor looks at that page, looks at a couple key things, and goes, "Here's how I do it, and this is how I would react in that situation." Yeah. And the difference is confidence. They trust their reactions and their own emotions and their emotional reactions and their own background and everything they've been through to come through on a scene. And the really confident ones pull it off every freaking time. They bat 1,000.
And there's another thing to remember too. There's different levels of acting. There's acting in theater with long written scripts with soliloquies and monologues, right?
And you got to raise your voice.
And a different type of approach and training to it. Then there's acting on screen, right? Where you're seen as a talking head. You might not be in full body like you are on stage. On stage, you're almost always full body, unless you're in some particular scene, right? Your whole body is exuding what's been written and you're interpreting it. But on screen and other things, it's that space. You ever heard of Michael Caine on acting?
It's your face.
Look up Michael Caine on acting, a bunch of YouTube videos. And Chris is right, it's your face. It's a very particular method because you're using a camera to capture it versus just voice, where your voice is important. Yeah. The reason they started with all these mics is because these mics add personality. It brings out the vocal qualities that we don't necessarily experience. When I shot you guys the other day, that was important to me then, but mine is like, I'm seeing you. You guys are laughing and rolling over. So it's a different it's a different type of acting, but acting can be very simple or it can be very hard.
Speaking of what we shot, man, please tell the folks how they can find you, what your socials are, and where they can find the show. This content that we're low key doing behind the scenes. Go ahead. Who wants to go first?
Well,
I'm just the actor. I'm at CL Kelsch, but basically Scott's the engine that drives the content.
Well, let's take that back. Chris is being modest now, but just say actor. So I use the word talent.
Yeah.
It's broader, right? He's a writer. He is an improviser. He's a comedian, right? He is he's a voiceover. I mean, we started when we talked about it, right? So, I'm at Scottie Rocks and at the Dog and Pony Show TV. And our little project called Chicagoland, which is on Indiegogo right now, is at Chicagoland with 2 underscores at the end.
And you have a studio,
Studio 28,
a recording studio, visual sound, I think
photography,
there's music set
video,
up, photography.
and creative.
What neighborhood where they are?
It's in,
how can they find you on there?
Avalon, Hermosa area. We're on the Pulaski corridor. Pulaski at Diversey. And the Workshop 4200 is the gallery. It's a large gallery of Smash Plastic. They publish records, print records. There's artists there. There is galleries. There's a marble artist there. She carves marble. There's Rooftopia, Smash Plastic, Leatherbees, which is a distillery. There's 40 different businesses in that large gallery, plus Studio 28, the Dog and Pony Show TV. We make a lot of cool stuff there. So if you stay tuned, you'll see Mike soon. If you're not seeing Mike already, Chris is Chris is a founding member of the Dog and Pony Show studio when it was in my
Had
basement.
a blast, people, by the way. Tune in.
Dude, that was some serious fun. You are
serious
fun to riff with,
hell yeah,
man.
you're fun.
Yeah, we'll do more of it.
Of course
we'll
we will.
invite some
Nah. You offended him a little bit.
You disrespected him a little
Offended
bit.
him a little bit.
Little
Offended
bit.
him a little bit. Treats are
Keep him
right.
there.
I didn't mean to get blood on your floor, man.
mutt, you.
You mutt. His whole family's mutts.
You can go dig your own. I never dug a hole before.
In fact, the next time you come over for our new little experiment, I don't want to say experiment because we're making the show.
Yeah.
Chris and Mike at night. Why don't you bring Big Joe with you?
I think we're gonna have to. Look at that. The whole family's in.
Yeah, man.
That's right, people. So you expect to see more. Also expect to like, share, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and your notifications and all that. Stay tuned. This is season 2. You see what I'm starting off with, people. It's just going to keep on going, keep on getting better. So we're hitting it every week. Back at it. Real Rap Podcast. Make sure you're checking out the Dog and Pony Show. Make sure you're checking out Studio
28 at the Dog and Pony Show.
At the
TV.
Dog and Pony Show.
TV.
And reach out to either one of these guys if you're looking for acting, if you're looking for a studio spot, if you need help with editing, things of that nature.
You want to cut a
they
song.
are there to find. You want to cut a song.
Live. You want a really cool video. You want to develop a brand.
Oh, yeah.
You want to do your, what do they call it? Electronic promo
Mail?
kit. EKI. Electronic media kit, right? EMK.
Real
It's
Rap.
called now?
Yeah.
Cool.
Hell yeah. Real Rap Podcast Season 2. Mike Knight. Love y'all.
The man.
Peace.
Oh, peace. I forget we're on camera.
Peace. Mike, you straight from the south side. Mike, now you. I'm just so happy to be here right now. Real Rap Podcast.